What's our intro? I forgot what our intro was. It's been so long since we've done this.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Spectacle Squad podcast. I'm Tyler, and joining me today is...
Hello, I'm Ben.
And I'm Jordan.
So, how you guys been? It's been a minute since we've done a podcast.
Oh, man, I'm good. I'm feeling good.
I realize we talk almost at least once every week when we do D&D or play games, but...
I mean, that's the only thing that's new. Besides us, is us doing D&D now. Which is probably why we haven't done a podcast. Think about it.
I mean, you're not wrong.
It's been a difficult climate for the last couple of months to have anything worth. I mean, with what we do as a podcast, it's like, I mean, what do we have to talk about? It's all nostalgia stuff. And
I was supposed to be fair, like what we do is like we pick old stuff. Like we haven't talked about a new thing in a while, which I guess like what we're doing today is like as close as we're gonna get.
Yeah, it's probably the closest new topic that we've talked about in a while.
Yeah, it's not even nostalgia, really. It's more like I played the game and I was like, I have things to say about this. And
I have things to say about this now, too.
Well, that's good. That's what I was hoping that people have things to say.
We're burying the lead on this one because nobody knows what we're talking about. Actually, it'll be in the thumbnail and it'll be in the description so they do know what we're talking about. Also, how are you going to, Tyler, real quick, how are you going to make the thumbnail? I'm really curious. Because there's 3 people, and who is what?
I'll probably just do the God of War symbol with...
No, you gotta find a picture with the... Oh yeah, we're talking about God of War, everybody. You gotta do Kratos, his son Atreus, and then the head.
Or, I mean, what's probably... Like, the picture you're going to find the most is probably going to be Kratos, Atreus, and the World Serpent, so...
That too, but honestly, I just want someone to be the floating head. I don't even care which one of us it is, but I was thinking about that earlier today.
I'd be surprised if there's actually any like art like that has that on there, because I think that was technically a surprise. Because I did watch a couple of like YouTube videos a couple weeks ago about having, I forgot his name now, Mimir, being in that, and it was like, because that's kind of a departure. I mean, everything about the game is a departure from God of War, but having a third perspective within the little group is...
Which is funny though, because he was always he was my favorite character once he came out.
Yeah, I thought he was great. So do we just want to get into it, or?
Yeah, let's get into it.
We want to do a rundown of the story, or just go beat by beat?
Why don't we talk? Why don't you, since it was your idea, Jordan? Why don't you start us off and tell us why you wanted to talk about this in the first place?
All right. Well, I can't remember when exactly I bought this game, but I bought this game like last year sometime, and then just never played it. Like I played it for like an hour and was like, "This is cool," and then just didn't play it again until I think it was the reveal of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I was like, "Oh, dude, I like Norse mythology shit. I should go back and play God of War," and so I decided to re-download it and play it, and I don't know, at first I didn't really like it. I was just like, I don't... Like, the combat was fine, the story was okay. The story starts off kind of slow for me, and I don't know, just after a while I got really attached to the characters and what was actually happening, and what's kind of odd is that the story is like actually really low stakes, and I kind of liked that it was just like a real low stakes story. And so, like, when I finished it, I was like, there's a lot of things. A lot of people say this is an amazing game. A lot of people say it's, game of the year for 2018. And I think it's pretty good. I don't think it deserves as many accolades as it's gotten, but I think it's fairly decent. It's definitely better than most of the games in the series.
Oh, wow. Saying that alone feels like a hot take, which is really funny. Saying it's not as good as everyone says it is.
Well, have you met me? That's all
I know. That's what I'm saying. But I'm just like you're the only person who could have a hot take on this game, man.
I think that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it, is because there's a lot to it that, like, I kind of want to defend why I don't think. Like, I think it's definitely a good game. I don't want to say that it's not a good game. I don't think it's an A+. I think it's at best B+, A-. Like, if I was to rate it, I would probably give it an 8.5.
That's
Like,
a fair rating.
I was supposed to say that's really really good.
yeah,
If you
and
think about it.
that's a good rating. But like,
Especially with
people
a
giving it
lot
like
of-
10s and 9s and shit, like that's too much.
I think that's a really fair rating, especially kind of comparing it to other games in the gaming scene right now and stuff like that. Because I mean, if you kind of compare it to like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which we kind of talked about when Ben was considering getting God of War or Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed has probably more bang for your buck as far as content, but personally, I think that the story elements and the storytelling elements are more consistent and more streamlined within God of War. I could never get into the Assassin's Creed games though. This is the only God of War game I've played, by the way, so I'm kind of biased on this.
I was gonna say, I think it's a really good to compare this to Assassin's Creed Origins and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, purely for the fact that they represent a reboot in a series that have been around for a long time. Dramatic changes to the game style. The combat and the mechanics themselves aren't that similar, but I mean, if you're looking for a third-person sword and sandals kind of game, that's what these are. And when we were talking about those, I've only played Assassin's Creed Origins out of those two, and only a little bit, and I was underwhelmed by, I think you're right about the bang for your buck, but I mean, because there's a lot more side quests and content and shit in it, but none of it is me. And so that, in Assassin's Creed Origins, it was there was a lot of go over here and fight this guy, and it would be a really long just running through the desert, which I didn't really care for, and then a big battle, a long ass fight with this really hard enemy that didn't really feel like, I don't know, people try to compare it to Dark Souls, and nothing about it felt like Dark Souls to me, because Dark Souls, it's all about mastering not only levels but enemies and their tells, seeing what they're gonna do and reacting to it properly. And this doesn't have that same kind of situation. It's not the tells are mostly just a big flashing light, this guy's gonna do a heavy attack and then roll out of the way or whatever. So I think that this game, one of the positives to have for it is that there's a lot to do, and most of it is actually meaningful. There's not a lot of side quests, but the ones that are there have purpose, have point, and they don't overstay their welcome. There are some really boring parts, all the collection of shit, but
so I feel because most of the side quests and stuff like that, the only ones that really really mean anything are the one that comes from the brother dwarfs. Those are the ones that are super important. All the other ones are just found around the Lake of Nine, and those ones are just like you said, it's collect things, or go light the spires, or go collect all these things for my dead soul or whatever. Those are okay, but there's not a whole lot of story there. But the thing about the ones with the dwarfs, and I did all of those as soon as they came up. I stopped whatever I was doing and I did those, because for one, I knew that I was going to get some good stuff out of it. Two, you get some really really interesting character stuff, not only with Atreus, but just I love the two dwarf brothers as a whole. Those are really great side characters, really awesome, and the way that they weave them into the story, I think, is really nice. Not only from a story perspective, but from for example, how they show up everywhere. Any other game, say Assassin's Creed or something like that, you're just gonna have a blacksmith in these random places and they don't say anything. This game takes its time and explains it to you as to why these people are why these two guys are popping up all over the place. It's just so clever. And so I wanted to do as much as I could with them because they were just so much fun to be around, and I just always loved it.
Agreed. Yeah, because with those side quests, especially, I think that the more boring ones, I think the part that I felt that had the big takeaway from those was the gear or something that you get. You always get something for what you're doing, and it's usually hardly ever did I get something not useful. more times than not, if I found something, like if I earned it in a quest, or if I found it in the world, it was way more meaningful than anything that I could purchase or
Yeah.
craft, unless it was like the legendary shit.
Yeah.
But even like one of the best armor sets you get in the game is earned through these collectible side quest things, which is the Valkyrie stuff.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, the missing sailors or whatever, the thing that I found kind of beneficial from that is the lore, because I don't know a whole lot about Nordic mythology or like how things within that. And I know this isn't like textbook Nordic mythology, but like the cool little stories that they had interwoven in that with like that like witch ghost or whatever that one guy has, where he's like, go get the bones of my lover and go do that. And then she turns into a witch lady and you have to fight her. And I was like, well, that was kind of neat. Like, you get these like little sense, like, because like that of Midgard's from Final Fantasy VII. Midgard is like Earth or whatever, but like you never see any real humans. Like, I think you kind of do, but then they transform into like the zombie people, so you never really actually.
You don't see anybody that like could be considered a real person, because like even the people that they say are real people are gods.
Yeah,
like Thea or whatever. Like she's a god. These two are gods. Like we thought the son might have been like half mortal, but we found out that even the mom was a giant. Like so, like that. Like yeah, it's really weird the way they do that. To be honest,
I guess we should have also preferenced a little bit of spoiler territory.
Oh yeah, sorry. I just like spoiled the big massive thing.
Well, it's not the biggest spoiler from that, but
I mean, it's like, and
it's also.
Close.
In my opinion, the game's been out for 2 years. If people are worried about spoilers at this point, certainly they've seen something somewhere that spoils at least some part of the story.
Like, you'd be surprised, because like I didn't know, like maybe it's just because I didn't pay attention. Because for one, like I didn't know that like he was going to get his Chaos Blades back, like at all. I didn't know that.
I looked at the trophy list.
Yeah, I didn't know that, so I was just like, like it was such a cool little thing, because like that's one of the only things I remember from the old games, because the only game I played before this in the God of War series was one of the PSP like prequel games, and that was it. But I remember those blades, and I remember how awesome they were. I'm like, oh, kind of interesting that they did away. Oh, wait a minute, here they are. And
I like how they did fit in this game, because at first I was like, it's not going to feel right, but they felt fine. Like it felt like good weapons.
Like story wise, like the way, and like because the blades kind of add on to this too. The way that they crafted him into the Norse mythology was so interesting, and that's why I can't wait for the second game, because I really want them to explain more of how like he's in this world and stuff, because they don't really do that. They just say like he's from the land of Sparta, he's from the Greece, and then they kind of acknowledge that yes, that the Norse gods know about the Greek gods, but like they don't really like say much besides that, which I thought was weird. They just kind of give you little tidbits here and there, and I'm really interested to see how they go about doing that.
The cool thing about this game for me, and I didn't realize it until later, after I played the game, which was probably earlier this year, the kid is voiced by the same kid in the main character of mid-90s. I don't remember his actor's name, but he's called Sonny in the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought my sister, she came into my room the other day because she thought that I was watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, because to her she sounds exactly like Aang.
He does. He sounds pretty close to Aang too, which I thought about earlier today.
I didn't even think about it until she said it, and then I couldn't stop hearing it.
I don't know if you guys are Stargate SG-1 fans, but
I am a Stargate SG-1 fan.
The guy that voices Kratos is the black dude from the Egyptian planet or whatever.
Really?
It's from SG-1. Yeah.
He's Teal'c?
Yeah.
No freaking way.
I don't remember the guy's name, but yes.
You learn something new every day.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, because at first I was like, is that the same voice actor? But it's definitely not the same voice actor from the old guy. So I played a little bit of 1. Like, I played like probably halfway through 1. I played like a couple of hours of 2. I've completed 3. I never played any of the PSP games. So like I know the ending of the storyline, which was pretty interesting. It's the stories of those are really weird. Like the first game, it's all about he's not. I think he knows he's a demigod, but I don't remember. But the Greek god Ares,
Yeah, he, like, doesn't he
betrays
replace?
him.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the whole first game, God of War, is about you killing the God of War. Like, that's the whole point, is that you fight Ares and kill Ares. And then after you do that, you become the new god, but then the gods betray you because they don't like you. And so the end of God of War 2 has like a Halo 2 style ending where like Kratos goes and joins with the Titans to go attack Olympus, and so like it ends with Kratos riding on the back of Gaia as they're climbing Mount Olympus, and that's where God of War 3 picks up. And then because those are the old hack and slash games, it always has a thing where you have to like reset and lose all your powers. So like he gets to the top of Olympus, he beats the shit. Like it's really cool in 3. The very first thing is like you fight Poseidon, and then you end up beating the shit out of him, and then like there's a bunch of quick time events, and the last one is you have to press in on both the thumbsticks, and that's Kratos pushing his thumbs into the eye holes of Poseidon, kills Poseidon. It's fucking rad. Yeah. And then you get cast down to Hades, and you basically work your way back up. You go from Hades back up to the top of Mount Olympus, and it's all about you just like murdering every god. Like it's crazy. Like
like that was another thing about this game is that somebody told me that you didn't really have to play any of the other games to play this game, and that's true to a point. But like it was like, especially like whenever the sun gets sick and then he starts having visions of Athena and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, like I want to know what's going on here. So like I went and watched this like 30-minute video explaining the whole timeline of all the games and stuff like that, just because like I couldn't like not, because like you don't need to, you really don't like I don't think for most people it'll take away from it for me, but like I had to know, because I'm like this, I just need everything to make sense to me.
It's just cool because this one actually makes Kratos like a person. Like in the other games, he was just like, it was literally just a killing machine, and so this actually kind of gave him humanity, and that was nice.
This gives him like a story about that, because he even says that I think one of the lines when he's finally talking to Atreus and he's telling him everything, he's like, yeah, that's all I did was kill people, like I was nothing else. And I'm like, oh dang.
Did the video you watch explain like why he looks the way he does?
Yeah, that was like one of the only things I ever remember, is that like his wife and family were killed, and so like the reason he's white like that and he's pale is because it's the ashes of his dead family.
And then the red tattoos are from when he basically murdered his brother.
Yeah,
and so like those tattoos are like the marks that his brother had, and so they were like placed on him, and that's why he's the ghost of Sparta, because he's white and murderous.
Yeah.
And then there's also a running gag within the series that in the very first game, like the prologue is your ship is attacked by a Hydra, and after you defeat the Hydra, you like go in its mouth, and the ship captain, he has a key around his neck, and he's like hanging down the throat of the Hydra, and you like grab him and then like kill him to get the key. Like you literally just murder this captain instead of saving him just to get this key. And so, like, in every game, that captain shows up, because, like, later on, you always go back to Hades. Like, whenever you lose all your powers, you always go to Hades. And so there's, like, a point where, like, he's in Hades, and then the guy's soul, like, falls on him and, like, catches his foot, and he's like, oh, shit, not you. And then, like, that dude just, like, he comes up in every game where, like, he just keeps finding his soul, and he's just like, oh, fucking hell, you again? The guy that murdered me? Kind of fun. And he's supposedly in this game, you like find his corpse, or there's like a note about him or something. It's not like him in the game, but there's definitely a
Yeah, I kind of thought this game, the story was going to go the route of like the god, like reincarnated versions of the Greek gods. That's what I thought. Like when like Zeus showed up in Helheim or whatever, but I don't think it's going to go there. I just, for whatever reason, I just kind of thought that that's what they might be going with it, which I'm glad they're not, because I'm like, that just doesn't, that would just get annoying at that point. But
yeah, so to go to the issues that I have with the game, some of my biggest issues are with the combat. not like the actual mechanics. I actually thought the mechanics weren't bad. It kind of reminded me of. Did you guys ever play the Devil May Cry reboot DMC?
No.
In that game, like you have your sword and then some guns, and basically it's all about like combos, like getting multiple hits, being real stylish, and eventually you get other weapons, like you get like a big demon axe, and then you get like some kind of angelic weapon, and I can't remember what it is, but you switch weapons by holding the triggers down. So if you hold right trigger, you get the angel weapon. If you hold left trigger, you get the demon weapon. So on the fly, you can go sword, 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 pull the trigger, switch to angel, beat the shit, switch left trigger, and so it's like you learn how to combo all these different attacks to be super stylish. And this kind of reminded me of that, with the way that you can switch between the Leviathan Axe and the Chaos Blades, and also having... it took me a while to get used to having the kid shoot the arrows like in particular ways. Like that was at first really annoying.
Yeah.
But once I figured that out, it wasn't so bad. But the issues that I have with the combat is that the combat feels so fucking repetitive that it does feel like the old games, where it's just the same shit over and over and over. And it doesn't feel like it's like once you get what you're supposed to do, you just rinse and repeat over and over. And then it's like the same kind of enemies, like you fight the same kind of ogres.
They literally are
giants
they're just reskinned enemies, and some of them are a bit harder. Like I remember when you go to Helfheim, you find a giant version of was it the troll?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah, you just find a giant version of him, and other than that, like there's really no difference. And then like even all like the gods and stuff like that, all of them are the same fight, you know.
Like, and then there's that one castle that had the two troll guys at the same time. One was ice and one was fire. Yeah. And like that was kind of, at first I was like, how the fuck am I going to do that? I was like, oh wait, just the same way over and over, because they only do the same 3 attacks.
Yeah.
They're just damage sponges. Like it's not complicated. It just takes a long time.
Well, the other thing too is like the game like tried to give you a bunch of different like moves and stuff like that, but I found myself just spamming like the same like 4 like every time. Like that, like, and even, which is why I was happy when I got the Chaos Blades, because at that point, like, I had, like, gotten so used to Leviathan, I'm like, yes, I get to switch things up, and that was kind of fun, but, like, I get what you mean, because I wanted to try to get really good at doing these, like, really impressive combos and stuff like that, but like, it would just be, like, so I would just end up doing, like, the same 4 things, and then, like, using Atreus, I used him way too much, because once I figured him out and figured out what his controls were and like how to utilize him, I upgraded him in like the sharpshooter. I mean, it's not a tree, but it's like whatever army you buy him, like that, like that's like what route he goes. So I did like the sharpshooter ones, which means that like towards the end, like I was constantly having arrows, so I would just spam the shock arrows. It would like stun my enemies, and then I would just do like 2 heavy attacks on them, and they'd be dead. And so that's how I would deal with the small ones, and it'd be similar to like the bigger dudes. So like it was super easy.
I went with the armor where sometimes he finds health vials for you, because that shit was driving me nuts. Like it felt like I was getting killed all the time for like stupid shit.
Yeah.
Because like the other thing that kind of bugs me is they changed the camera to like a 3rd-person shooter perspective, and like most of the time it worked. But when it didn't, it was so fucking annoying. Like when something would go over your shoulder, and it'd just be like, "Fuck."
Yeah, because the other thing too is because what they would do is like they like for the most part like you get into this little clearing, and they throw like 8 dudes at you, and then like your character like Kratos would focus on one, but then the camera would turn anytime that guy moved. And like you couldn't move, like I feel like you didn't have like the freedom to move around when you went. Like they gave you the control to do that quick spin, but for whatever reason, like that wouldn't work for me. Like half the time, it wouldn't even work, and so that would be my problem. Is that like I wouldn't be able to see the guy behind me, and so then like I would just be like super blind all the time, and so that got really frustrating too. Like that's how I would go down a lot. It's just like I would get surrounded by these guys, and then like once you get the Chaos Blades, it's not bad because he basically has a huge spinning attack to keep people away from him. But like especially with ranged enemies like that, it drove me nuts.
Yeah, and I didn't like that. Oh shit! I just lost it. What was I about to say? Fuck! What I was gonna say? I literally just forgot. Just all of a sudden. We'll come back to it. I'll remember eventually. But yeah, the range, like, I thought the throwing of the axe was cool.
Yeah.
I did that a lot. I would just spam the shit out of that.
After a while, though, I kind of stopped using it. Like the only people it's really good are the big enemies. Like that's what it works best on. Especially the dude who was like the rock giant or whatever. Like
Oh yeah, the
like what,
ancient
the ancient ones, yeah.
ancient golem things.
That was one of the first like special armors I got, was doing that. So
I felt like those fights were really boring because there's always a pillar in the middle of the arena, and you just walk around that in circles and throw your axe, and then it was always like go and get their stuff so you can throw it at them, and I was like, why? I'm doing just much damage just throwing my axe.
I was going to say, yeah, like I figured that out too. Is like you just got to keep throwing the axe. And then you would do that, and I was like, once I figured it out, I'm like, that's what, because I think that's what it was, because like they want you to, because the problem was like his little like body parts that exploded on him, like they would fall right next to him, so then you'd run and grab it, and then he'd do a close up attack on you, and like that's how they would get you. But like once you realize you don't have to do that, like, oh man.
The only one of those that was hard was the one time that there wasn't a pillar in the middle of the arena, and you just actually had to like run from side to side anytime he was trying to do something.
Yeah, the only one that really caught me up was the one in the woods. Outside of that, it was after one of the dwarf missions or whatever, and like you would have to go and like go. I think it was when you're trying to collect the sandstone or whatever. And like there was like one of the fire ones inside the woods, and there were a bunch of other little enemies keep running after you, but it's in all these trees and stuff like that. But like it was one of those other problems where I was having a hard time getting Kratos to focus in on it, and so like it would just. Like, I think that was the only one I ever died fighting.
There was one that I missed it the first time I went through, and so like after I had finished the game, I was running around getting the last of the collectibles, and I thought that it was a rock pile that you can break, and so I was trying to break it, and then it like got up, and I was like, oh shit, it's one of those, I forgot about those guys, and then I killed it in 3 hits because I was so over leveled for it. And I was just like, oh, oops, okay.
Dude, I was so OP by the end of that game because like I'm a real sucker for like side quest stuff like that because like the game, because I love this game. One of the things I love is that like you can do all the side quests you want, or you don't have to. Like the game doesn't like require you to do it. Like you can still play the story and you'll be fine. You'll just be at level with what it is. But if you do decide to do all the side quest stuff and then go do the story, like you were so OP for like any armor I got during the story at that point, like I never used. Or anything I found I would never use because it would never be as good as what I already had on me. Like I had armor that I got fairly early on in the game, like maybe 10 hours into playing, that I didn't replace until I was almost done with the game. And then like the last armor, and the armor that I still had on was the one that you get after doing the last side mission for both the brothers. And then you can free that dragon, and then you go collect this like special material that only they can use together. And then you can buy either one brother's armor or the others. And I'm sorry, I keep forgetting their names. I don't remember what their names are. But I always went with the one with the golden armor, like because he had this like really cool like teal colored armor, and like I used that for the rest of the game. And like it looks really kind of dorky on Kratos, but I was like I worked hard for this, so I like wore it for the rest of the game.
Did you never get the Niflheim armor?
Is that the one with like the lava rock creatures on like that planet?
No, it's the Niflheim is the fog realm.
I didn't do that till after I finished the game. I never went there till after I finished the game.
Yeah, so on first playthrough, the strongest armors you can get are the Niflheim armor, which when you have all the full set of it, like for everything, you get like ×5 just constant healing, which is really nice. And then the other strongest is the Valkyrie set. So those two, like if you have everything leveled up, it'll put you at 8.5 level.
Jesus Christ.
The max level is actually 10, and I learned this later on. If you play New Game Mode Plus, it actually goes further, and you eventually unlock versions of all that armor that's higher level. Like, you know how it had the different colors of, I think it was like white, green, blue, purple, gold. Is that right? Or is it?
Yeah.
Something like that. The last color is red, and so it's a red emblem and everything, and that's like I think it's called God or whatever. Like that's what it is, and so if you have that full set, that puts you at level 10, and that's like the strongest. And when you play on New Game Mode Plus or any of the harder difficulties, you pretty much have to get that red armor too, and well, red items in general, because like you can get red items for what's his face too, Atreus.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then you'll be like fully maxed out, and that's like the only way to defeat Sigrund in New Game Mode Plus.
Interesting. Yeah, I really can't see myself playing New Game Plus anytime soon. Like, because
that's how I feel. Like, I'll play it again eventually, but I'm one of those people where I get all the trophies and then I'm done, and so I platinum the game. And I was like, yo, like if you want people to play New Game Mode Plus, you got to throw something on here that makes me want to play New.
Well, see, the other thing for like I'm a little different. Like the reason I go do all the side quests like before I do the story stuff is that once I do the story stuff, I hate how the games act after you do the story, where it's all this like little after stuff, and they're like still talk like that drives me nuts. And so I hate playing like that, and so like I just don't like playing like games after that. So that's why I try to do as much as I can before I beat the story, because then I usually don't touch it after that. And that's how I feel with this game. Like I did, but it just annoyed me. Like
that's weird because I felt like this game did a really good job of like the secondary dialogue after the game is over, letting you know that it's over.
It does better than most, I will say. And like here in a minute, I really do want to just spend some time talking about just the story, because that was one of the big tentpoles of this game. But it's just for whatever reason, like I have no drive to play it. Like as soon as I'm done, like the second we got back, like I tried to do some more stuff, and then I went and killed a Valkyrie, but I'm like, my heart is just not in this as much as it was. I don't know what it is. It's just a weird thing with me, man. But that's
a shame, because the Valkyries are they're really frustrating, but they're the only fights in the game that actually, like, each Valkyrie is different. And so, like, you actually have to, it's like, that's the only part that I would say is like Dark Souls, is you have to go in there and you have to learn how they act. And it's really cool
it takes
until you fight Sigrund. And then Sigrund knows everybody's moves and is random. Like, you have no idea what she's going to do. Like, all the other ones, they have a formula. She doesn't. So, like, going in there and fighting her is, like, I've watched a bunch of videos of people doing, like, no-hit runs against her, like, at level 1. And, like, you know, it's like a 45-minute fight where they're just, like, dodging every attack and doing every counter hit. It's so good.
Yeah. Which I can understand why that appeals to you, though, because I'm not as much of a fighting game person or a Dark Souls person. So it's like, that kind of stuff doesn't, like, that. Like, that's definitely more up your alley than it is mine. But I did kill one. I killed the one that was in the... where was it at? It was either the one in the mountain, or... And I think I started a second one. I don't remember where, though. But...
I also would just go row my boat around the lake until Amir stopped telling stories. Like, I think I finally ran out of stories for him, but I was really interested in every little Nordic lore story he had.
I would do that too, because it would be one of those things where, like, I would get to where my port was, and then I would just, like, not hit circle so he could finish his story.
Yeah.
Because that would be the other annoying thing too, that they would just like, oh, we'll pick this up later. We'll talk about that later. This isn't the time for, like, that. Just didn't like that. So I would always just wait for him to finish talking. It was really nice. That was the other reason. Like, I was happy he came along, because then I had to stop, or then I could stop listening to Kratos stories, because those were always really cringy and annoying.
Sure.
So, yeah. But yeah, I think now I kind of want to talk a little bit about this game's story, because oh my gosh, man, like this game, I think what something you said earlier about like truly giving like Kratos like a story, and one like deserving of this character, I think is really good. And I think it works really well because it ties it into the old games in a way that I have not really seen things do, because like it takes this character from these older video games where he was very one dimensional, and he just was a guy who killed, a guy who was mad. Like, there wasn't much story to him, and they turned that into like a remorse thing for this totally different version of this character, and it just worked on so many levels for me. Because then when he's doing this thing with the son, and you start off with his wife's like funeral, and they're burning her, and like the whole story is this them just wanting to spread her ashes and stuff like that, and just the way that it tied in, and there's just so many different levels of his like emotionally going on between how he interacts with the son, how he's thinking about his old family versus the family he has now, and then like as you slowly learn like why he's sort of resentful of his kid because his kid's half god and he hates the god. Like it's just so many things going on at once, and I was like, holy crap! I'm here for all of it. I loved it. Like that was like my favorite part of the game. Like even when the game got, like you said, like it would get repetitive at times, and it like that's especially towards the end. Like I was really just wanting to speed up through the story because like I would just want to keep watching this, and I want to keep like experiencing this with these characters because like that's what kept me coming back to this game. Was this really intense story between this father and the son, which in a way is something that we can all relate to anyways. Like sometimes you can relate to kind of Kratos, or sometimes you can relate to Atreus, and this was kind of like distant relationship between these two, and it was just so good. I haven't seen anything done like this in this medium in such a long time.
I will say that this is probably the first PS4 game that I played that I was honestly really kind of amazed by, both story and cinematically, because well, I played it with my dad, and like in the current gaming climate, it's hard to find co-op games to play, couch co-op basically. And when we played the game, we didn't have two PS4s, so we would just switch off and stuff. So it was fun to do that, and it was kind of like a father-son adventure aside, like alongside Atreus and Kratos. But like cinematically, it's probably one of the best PS4 games in my opinion to do so. Like the beginning sequence, even though you're just taking logs to a pyre and stuff, it's like wow. Like graphically, by far one of the most amazing games. Even though it's 2 years old now, it's still crazy to me.
Yeah,
because it's not going for like photorealism, and it has its own style, but it doesn't try to be photorealistic, and it doesn't try to be something super movie-esque, but it does it in its own special way.
yeah.
I just fucking love it.
Did you guys play Last of Us?
I did.
Nope, I did not.
To me, this had some heavy Last of Us vibes.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Like camera, like the way that even like within the game itself works, like perspective, the way the maps work.
Well, I was about to ask because like one thing that I really loved about this was the fact that there weren't any cutscenes. Like you really like there isn't one. It just the camera shifts perspective a little bit, but you never lose that perspective between Kratos and like it just feels like an ever-ending story, and I love that. Like the game keeps you in with these characters all the time. And like, does The Last of Us do that, or are they actual cutscenes?
Yeah, it's all in game. Like, I mean, it's gonna be hard. I say that, but I mean, I'm pretty sure it is because when Last of Us came out, it like the first time, it was the last year of the PS3, and then not too long after that came out as a remaster on PS4. So with that in mind, it's not as I mean, it's still pretty good looking. Like,
oh yeah, it's still graphically impressive as far as a PlayStation game. I mean,
well,
I definitely
pretty sure
wouldn't
all the
poo-poo it.
cutscenes are they're in engine graphics. Like I don't think there's a lot of games nowadays, like these kinds of games, that don't use the in-game graphics for the cutscenes. Like that's just that's kind of old tech. The only ones I can think of now are
I'm talking about
smaller games.
Like the game, like it doesn't like. Because you know how like some games like they'll turn it into like cinematic mode and something like that, and they'll like do like a widescreen version, or they'll like cut to different things, and cut to different perspectives, and there'll be like camera cuts. Like this game doesn't do that. Like you stay with Kratos. That's what I meant. Yes,
there are cutscenes. Like it's very cinematic during the parts, but it's I don't know. It doesn't feel like. Well, you said, have you played saying that, then have you played any of the Uncharted games?
Yeah, I played. I'm playing. I'm
okay, it's Uncharted. Like it's just like Uncharted 4, except
okay.
It's
I kind of figured, but
different. But
that's why I like this game so much. Is like it feels like because like the game, you stay with these characters through every single moment. Like all the like pauses and all the other stuff, and like you just sit there with them and like forever. You watch them through every like painstaking moment. You're there with them this whole time, and there's just something about that was just really powerful.
yeah, it's like one continuous shot the whole time.
Yeah.
Because even when it goes into a cutscene, like, yeah, you're right. It doesn't have any like cuts to a close up or anything.
No,
the
like,
camera's always following and moving somebody. Like there's a focus at all times.
Like I don't know if you guys have had a chance to go see 1917 yet. If you at least just from like a filmmaking perspective, I definitely suggest you go watch that because it does the same thing where like they made the movie to where it all looks like one continuous shot, and it's not like that's only been done a few times before, and this is the best case I've seen it in 1917 because like you're with those characters all the time, and the thing that I found out is that especially in a movie in that setting where it's like this intense, nasty, gritty World War I trenches setting is like you don't have a time to like relax. You are like tense. This wasn't like that to that extreme, but like it felt like that where like you don't really have a chance to breathe because it's just like because like on some games on cutscenes you're like oh, okay I can sit, but like for this one just for whatever reason it just kept you moving. I loved it.
Yeah, it's like when it's the different of other games. Like other games, when it gets to a cutscene, you put the controller down and you watch. But in this game, it's like you don't feel comfortable until you get back into the game where you can play, and then it's like okay, I can because it's like when a cutscene happens, it's like I'm watching that what's going on, and then and then after that, whenever it's like all right, go from point A to point B, then I'll be like. You know what? I'm gonna take a break now. But it's like I'm gonna watch this. Like if it was just like a movie, I just would straight just watch this as a movie the whole time. Like it was very. I didn't actually think about it being as a one take camera thing the whole time, and that's now I kind of do want to go back through it just so I can see it from that perspective.
Yeah, dude, it's insane. And the other thing too is how you said it was a small stakes story because that's all it is. Like that's why it makes it like this. It makes it so personal.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't try to do the whole world, and there's stuff there. And I think that what they're doing is they're building up for the next game to be kind of more world ending scale. Like I think they're definitely hinting to Ragnarok, and I think that's probably gonna happen at some point, especially now that they revealed that Atreus is Loki. Which don't even get me started on that. I don't know how that's gonna work out, but like that
it blew my mind. Did you wait when you played? Did you go back home?
Yes,
I haven't gone back.
yes.
I haven't gone back home. No.
You need to.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Now I'm like, do I say what happens when you go back home?
You can't. Like, I'm not gonna get offended. Like,
okay.
Odds are I'm just gonna look it up on YouTube.
It's really short anyway. So you go back home, and as soon as you teleport back home, the kid's like, "Man, we haven't been here in forever." And then you're actually able to go back in the house. So when you go back in the house, you guys like go and sit on your beds and Kratos is just like, all right, son, go to sleep. Like, we're both tired. Like, you know, they haven't rested since, well, I mean, Atreus got to rest a little bit because, you know, he was dying.
Yeah, because, like, I want to know, a little side thing real quick, sorry. I want to know how much time passes in game.
I think it's like a week, maybe less. Like, I don't think it's that actual long of a time. I mean, it's not like a day-night cycle, but...
It can't be more than a couple days. I think it's going to be at least like 2 days or something like that. Something crazy like that.
Yeah. So they go to sleep, and then it has like the words come up like 2 years later or something, or maybe it's even, was it 10 years? It's like a length of time.
I don't remember.
I remember either being short or long. I don't remember which. But then they both wake up, and it's like storming outside, and Kratos is like, stay behind me, and he like goes and opens the door, and there's a man in a cloak standing out in the storm outside, and he's like, who are you? And the guy, he moves his cloak to the side, and just there's Mjolnir just sitting on the guy's hip like a holster, like almost like a gunslinger, like where he's about to grab it.
Like as soon as he said thunder, I'm like, yeah, that's Thor.
Yeah, and so then it just shows Mjolnir, and then Atreus wakes up, and he's just like, Dad, I had a weird dream that Thor came to the house and he was like, "We'll deal with that in the future," and then it just like goes back to you being able to play, and that's it. Like that's
Oh, I gotta go do that. Never mind. I'm actually gonna go do that now. That seems really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's one thing to like describe it and like watch it on YouTube, but like experiencing
Yeah.
it as you're playing is so fucking cool. And
I was
Yeah,
confused. I thought it was like because they'd already did the credits and everything, and I was
Mhm.
like, it was kind of crazy because it's like, okay, if you think about it in a film terms, so like you like leaving the mountain is the credits, and then
Yeah.
kind of like the conversation you have is like the stinger of him being Loki,
yeah.
and so you're like, it's over. But this is like the true, like if this is like a Marvel movie, that was like the stinger after the beginning of the credits,
Which is
and
really
then-
funny because like you don't have any real incentive to go back to the house.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Like
no.
play the game. Like that's what I was like that's why I didn't know about that because I'm like I have no reason to go back to the house. Like there's nothing at the house that I remember. Like all the stuff is after you leave the house. Like even all the stuff that you can go back and collect. So I'm like I have no real reason to go back there. And so now I have to.
I had to go back and explore the woods because there were some things that I missed the first time through. Because there are a few of the like brambles and stuff that you have to use the chaos blades on to break through. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
wanted to go
so-
back to the house because like there's always that part of me where I'm like, is this kind of like a Dark Souls scenario where there's going to be a hidden wall or something else that you can explore that you didn't see the
Yeah.
first time that you went through it? So I kind of went back there, and then I was like, "Oh, Dad, we can do this." And we watched the scene, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
It's
that
fucking cool.
the game definitely did that where it was like, oh, you're going to need to come back here later. But what I really liked is that for the most part, instead of doing that, they just hid parts of it. Like I remember the first time you get to explore the lake and you look at these little areas and it's like, oh, I can't really do a whole lot here yet. That doesn't really make sense. And then the first time the serpent moves and the water recedes, you're like, oh my God. I know, like, this makes so much sense now. Like,
Mhm.
now, like, I can do this, and then, like, you can't do everything at once. Like, sometimes it's, like, I remember, like, the first time, like I was, like, getting frustrated because I'm, like, I don't understand. Like, why can't I, like, what's the point of this? Like, there's no, like, way for me to, and then, like, it all made sense. And so then I would, like, do everything I could, and then go through the story until the serpent moved and the water receded somewhere, and then I did everything, and then, like, that's how I did it. And I loved it. Like I thought that was such a cool way to do the little side things.
Agreed. It was cool uncovering it. That kind of made me think of what's it called, Shadow of the Colossus. Like
Yeah,
just because of like where the water there's a lot of like that water shit where you're like going around, and when you're like seeing this expanse of stuff and having to make your way across it, that not like one for one, but I had some Shadow of the Colossus thoughts, especially with how big fucking the world serpent was. He was pretty cool.
yeah. I really liked that comparison, and I thought it was really cool when you got to like go inside of him, and like they had all the like ruins and stuff, and like the game really does give you the scale of like how big that dude is, and like I thought that was really cool. Like just visually, I like, and then just having him always just chilling out in the background. Like if you're at the lake, if you're at the lake, there's never a time where you can't see him if you're anywhere on the lake.
Yeah, especially like when you go to like the ice place and you can still kind of see his like part of him just like curling up over a mountain like off in the distance.
Yeah.
That was really
Well,
cool.
that was the same thing with like the giant too. Like once you got over to that side of the lake, you could kind of start seeing the giant.
I wanted to see more. Like the things that I never expected was whenever you'd hit story beats that would change the layout of places where you couldn't go back. Like after you do the whole giant thing and you can't explore around the giant anymore, and I was just like, "Yo, how do I know I got everything?" I mean, I guess I did because they wouldn't cut it off if you couldn't, and it's like everything about the game is supposed to be unmissable. So
yeah,
but it was still kind of. I was like, "Fuck, man!" Like, there's some places on there I wanted to go explore again.
Yeah, it was definitely cool seeing him though, and like that whole thing. So okay, Jordan, you already said some things you didn't like about the game. Tyler, was there anything that you didn't really like about it?
So when I played the game, I don't know if it was resolved with some patch or something, or if I was just inept. But after we beat the game, my dad and I kind of went through and did all of the Valkyrie fights because that was one of the only things that we hadn't done yet. So on the last Valkyrie, at the time of when we were playing it, it was so fucking hard. And like Jordan was saying, like a lot of the other Valkyries you could kind of study and figuring out their patterns and stuff, but this one you couldn't figure out. And I had read somewhere that it was just like kind of a broken fight. Like she would start one attack and then start doing another. And that fight was almost like the is it Smog and Ornheim in the first Dark Souls?
Yeah. Ornstein and Smog.
Yeah. It was almost like that fight for me because it took about the same amount of time to complete as that fight in Dark Souls took, which was like about a week and a half for the both of us to try to figure it out. And that was probably one of the only times that I had an issue with the combat mechanics. And like you've talked about, Ben and Jordan, with the camera and stuff, like I would always have issues with the camera kind of jumping around from enemy to enemy and Kratos defocusing from the one I wanted to attack. But yeah, that fight just irritated the shit out of me. But other than that, I never really had any big complaints with much of the game.
Do you remember what level you were when you tried to go against her?
I have no clue. I think I might have played it a year ago, honestly.
Because I think honestly, like she is the in the story, like all the story boss fights are easy. Well, the two brothers were kind of hard, but like I don't know, that one I just kind of had to push through. But she's the actually only real hard fight in the game, and I couldn't do it until I got myself max level for regular game, like new game. Like I had to get to 8.5 before I could even take a hit or do damage. And a thing that I had issue with is it took me almost like probably 2/3 of the game before I realized that the gold attacks are still unblockable. Like it bothered me that there were two different versions of unblockable. The red ones, which means you have to dodge, and then the gold ones, like what I thought it meant was gold was you could parry, and red ones you couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
What it actually means is red will hit you no matter what unless you dodge. Gold means you can block it, but it's like you can't parry it, and so like it's only basic attacks that you could parry. And I was just like, well, half the time people aren't using any basic attacks to parry, so. Mm-hmm. It bothered, like, it took me, I don't know why I couldn't figure that out until the very end, and I was like, oh shit. So, it's basically just telling me always just dodge. Like, there's really no reason to parry unless it's just, like, regular Skeleton Man #1 is just trying to, like, bonk you with his sword.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know, like, because the parry was so beneficial, but you could hardly ever use it, and especially against Sigrun. She loves spamming the unblockable attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So,
kind of going back to the talking about how when the game goes from a playable section to an unplayable section is like as far as like the cutscene aspect of the game, and how you kind of feel like you should never let go of the controller and how you should always kind of be paying attention. When you have that first fight with Freya's son, that kind of really it popped into my head when we were talking about it, and that is kind of like a really good example of the right way to do a game that constantly keeps your attention, and not just in like a story aspect, but also kind of being on guard.
Yeah,
because like it wasn't a necessarily like a QTE. I mean, I'm sure it was a long time ago that I played the game, but I like this game a lot. I'm definitely gonna go back and replay it sometime this year because I still remember it, but just talking about it makes me want to go back and dive into it.
I think a couple my two other complaints, because I've already talked about the controls. and that's there. And my two other complaints, and I think as far as just like I said, like I had done every side mission you could, and by the time I got to the last fight, so when I did the last fight, it was not hard for me at all. Like it was super easy to the point to where like when I did figure out like, oh, this is the end of the game, like I was like, huh, this is really weird. This feels a little anticlimactic to me. So I'm like, I had no problem whatsoever fighting this guy that they've been building up this whole time, and he's dead. So I'm like, okay, that was a little bit weird. But then the other thing I had a little bit complaint about, and this is the only story part of the game that I absolutely like despise, was shortly after Atreus finds out that he's a god, and then he starts acting like hot stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That drove me nuts.
Yeah.
Like when you're having to go back up to the mountain, and the game forces you to go the long way because it wants you to experience this little brat who won't shoot the arrows. You tell him to shoot the arrows because he thinks he's all like he's Mr. Big Shot and he's just gonna go do what he wants. That drove me nuts because like I like for one, like him talking and being like him complaining and him just acting like the kid with the tantrum drove me insane. I couldn't handle that. But then like you said, like it completely screwed up the way I was fighting because I was expecting you to do something. You like it drove like I hated it. Like I was like so happy when they got rid of that. I was like yelling at my TV.
Well, I don't want to be that guy, but to address your first issue, they did the director and of the game, they did like a Q&A at some point, and they were talking about like Kratos's power level compared to the other gods, and the whole thing was like at the beginning, like he really like he's trying to hide his godhood from his son. Mm-hmm. So he really is like when he's getting the shit beat out of him by Baldur, he's actually like letting that happen. Like if he went full force, he could have just broken the mountain in half. Like he is at the same level as them, if not stronger, because of like how much power he's absorbed. Because I mean, he just got through killing all the gods of Greek, yeah, and he absorbed a bunch of the power of Zeus, and so he's got like untold amount of strength. And so I think that that's the whole thing where it's not necessarily that Baldur is stronger than you, it's just that he can't like feel and he can't die. So he has that I don't know, but once you get past that point of it, it's like it's showing that you are on equal level with them, and this is why that they fear you. Or at least this is why they're going to fear you, is because you can just take them out easily.
I mean, that's fair, but like that does make sense from a story point. But I'm just like from like a gameplay perspective, it's just like I did not take almost any damage when I fought your final, like supposedly final boss in the story, and I'm like, that just seems, I don't know, like it just like it wasn't even a challenge. Like it was just super easy to me. It just felt like a little bit too easy.
I don't think he's supposed to be the final boss. Like, honestly, like, the final boss of the game is Sigrund. Like, I think it kind of takes that old school gaming thing. Like, I don't know if you ever played Final Fantasy games, but, like, in Final Fantasy, the final boss of the game, like, the story, isn't the hardest boss of the game. Like, the hardest boss is always the secret boss. And that's the one that has the highest health, the strongest attacks. It's always one that you have to work to go fight because it gives you a reason to continue. It gives you a reason because just like in games all the time, whenever you complete the game, it's usually when you get the strongest equipment, and it's like, well, what the fuck am I going to do with this? There's this indie RPG that was made back in the Xbox 360 times called Breath of Death 7: The Beginning, and it's the only one of its kind. It's a satire on old RPGs, like turn-based RPGs. And the hardest boss in the game is a duck dragon. And yeah, it's a funny game. The whole thing is like the first like all your characters are all horror themed. Like the first one is a skeleton fighter, and then you get a ghost wizard, and then a zombie rogue, and then you get a vampire werewolf hacker. And the storyline turns out to be like it's post-apocalyptic, and then everything is turned into like this fantasy world after the post-apocalypse. And so the final, like you play the whole storyline, and then once you beat the game, there's a secret dragon duck, the hardest boss in the game, and after you defeat them, they give it gives you Excalibur, the sword, the strongest sword in the game. But at that point, there's nothing else to fight. Like, there's no new game plus. There's no other bosses. There's only random encounters. And so it's like, it's the joke is that you get the strongest weapon in the game from the hardest enemy after you don't need it anymore.
That is really funny.
So, like, for me, in this game, it's, for God of War, it's, like, that's the end of the story, because, like, it's almost like he is embracing his godhood, and that's why it's not that hard. You know, the both of you are working together as a team of gods against these guys. But, like, the actual hard boss fight, the one that you're actually working towards to get all this good shit for, is Sigrun, because not only do you have to learn how her attacks work, and you do that by fighting all the other Valkyrie, but you have to be strong enough, aka, like, and that's one of the issues I have with the game. I fucking hate the level up system that's like Destiny, where it's based off your gear. Like, that's fucking bullshit. I hate it. Like, I don't want to be weaker because I put on uglier armor. That's stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, and it's, you're not even really working for it, because it's like, I mean, I guess you kind of are with the Valkyrie gear, because you can only earn it by killing Valkyrie, but anyhow. So yeah, like, that's the actual boss fight. Like,
I mean,
that's just the end of the story. Like, and honestly, at that point, like, I didn't want to have to, like, you know, this is like the third time having to fight him. Like, I was over it. Like, I didn't want to do it anymore. Like, for me, fighting him wasn't fun, because it wasn't.
Well, because all that would happen, and every time you fought him, he would just, like, take a bunch of hits, and then he would talk to you, and then he would get his health back.
Yeah.
And then like, sometimes the game would give you your health back, sometimes it wouldn't, and that was the only difference. And then, like, especially once Atreus got his act together, like, using him with that dude was like, yeah, it was definitely. It was something. But I guess, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, like, I'm not, like, I think it's just more the way, like, I played the game. Because, like, the odds of me going back and fighting the rest of the Valkyrie anytime soon isn't likely. I'll probably do it at some point, but
I hope you do, because, like, it's frustrating, but it's also fun. It's definitely better than my other complaints are, like, the other two realms that you unlock, Muspelheim and Miflheim. Like, I found both those places, like, I hate the trial things. Like, I always hate trials and challenges and shit like that, because I just don't find that fun. I don't that it takes what you've been doing 1,000 times over and over and over, and to change it up, it just changes one little thing about the combat. Like, oh, the only way to kill enemies is like an insta-kill, so you have to beat them up with your fist. Like, I get that it's like teaching you different things, like different ways to play, but like, I've already fought like a bajillion people. Yeah. Like, there's nothing new about this. It's just another way to do this.
The thing that drove me nuts about that was when it'd be like, oh, you have to, if there's one enemy left after like a certain amount of time, another one's going to respawn, and you have to have all the enemies dead before the next one respawns to continue. That drove me nuts, because what it would do is I would wait until you're on your last one, and then like an enemy would spawn at the other side of the map, and so like you always have to do things. And like the thing is, what they wanted you to do is they wanted you to learn how to do chain kills and do kills really quickly. But like, it just, as like I said, it's like, because of that problem with like the camera movement, I would never be able to do it, and it would. Oh, I hated it so much.
Yeah, it was so tough. It was very frustrating. And then Miflheim is super frustrating because it's like a procedurally generated dungeon, which I thought sounded awesome, until you find out that it's literally just, it's a square, but from the videos that I watched to figure out the best way to, like, because I wanted to get through it as fast as possible, because it takes fucking forever to unlock all the shit in that.
Yep.
They reference it like it's a baseball diamond, so it's like first base, second base, third base, home. And so that's how I just kind of envision it now, is like in that formation. And it's just like, it's the same shit where it's just run in, and this time the difficulty is you have a short amount of time to fight things. And so, like, you have more time if you build the armor, which the armor itself is really good and worth crafting. It's, I mean, in a sense, it's actually better than the Valkyrie armor. It's just, I would say it's a little harder to get, because you actually have to craft each piece rather than just getting it off the corpse of a dead Valkyrie. So, but that drove me nuts. Like, that was the very last thing that I did, was the Miflheim stuff, because it wasn't fun. Like, I would just do like 5 runs and then play something else. because it just wasn't. It wasn't worth my time, and then having to find all the treasures and shit, like that was annoying. Just walking from place to place, like looking for, a shining light, being like, "There's a toy truck here, not a toy truck, but a boat or whatever."
Yeah, I feel you, man.
I will say that you could almost compare Niflheim to like underwater levels in other games, as far as like you have a constantly depleting health meter, and only a certain amount of time to do things before you fucking die. But I kind of agree. That was probably the most irritating part of the game. Like, the last Valkyrie fight was irritating to me, but just dying because you made a stupid mistake and then you're out of health potions or whatever. It was just fucking irritating as shit.
And also, you want to explore these realms, right?
Exactly.
Like, the whole thing about this is that there's all these realms that are connected, and there's all the more, and the only realms you really get to explore are, the biggest one is Midgard, and like you're like, well, I mean, fuck, I live on Midgard. I don't really fucking need to know what Midgard looks like.
Yeah.
And then Affelheim, that place looked fucking rad, but you barely get to go around it, and that drove me nuts because I was like, what is going on here? What they talk a little bit about the light elves and the dark elves, but it's like,
yeah, I love how they just kind of like threw you in the middle of that, and then it's like there's like it just doesn't like, and then like as soon as like you leave, like none of it mattered.
Yeah,
I thought it was gonna affect the story in some way, and maybe in the second one they come back to it. Like maybe that's what that is. But like you're showing up at the end of this war, you help end the war, and you leave. And
well, it's not really over because that's what they say in the lore, that they've been fighting back and forth, and that it's always controlled by somebody else. So when you get there and you're like, oh shit, it's controlled by the Dark Elves, it's like this time, but that's not always the case. Like, all you did was just turn the tide for the Light Elves, and then the whole thing too is like, I guess technically the Dark Elves are evil, but there's no like actual proof. It's just they're really like warlike, so it's like you don't know if whatever side you're helping is the good side. It's just,
and like Kratos even says something to that effect. He's like, you're just you're seeing the end of a war, like you don't know whose side is like who did what.
But and then Helheim, like I felt like that was, they had to make you go to Helheim because you've been to Hades so many times. Might as well see Nordic Hades. And that place is okay, but that the boat level was so annoying. I hated the boat level.
Yeah, so did I.
But yeah, like Muspelheim and Niflheim, you're like, I want to explore this shit. Like this could be cool, and you never get to do that. Fucking the whole thing is about going to the goddamn Giants realm, and you just you get to just walk across a plateau, and that's it. And
what the fuck? And then you just see all of like the giant corpses, like 100 of them or something, and then that's it. I don't know. I think this leads me to the last thing I think we should talk about, and is what do you guys want to see from the sequel to this series? Like what do you want to see as far as gameplay wise, story wise? Like what you looking forward to? Because there's obviously going to be a sequel. This is one of the best games PS4 had.
I'm curious if it's kind of go in the direction of how Kratos was talking to Atreus about how we have to be better, how we have to be better than I was in my past, or how the Greek gods were in the past. And if it's somehow kind of going to go to a peaceful resolution, or Kratos is somehow going to go out of the picture and Atreus is going to kind of take over as some sort of ruler and strive for a better god position, as far as like the gods are actually beneficial for people and not just themselves.
So what I think is going to happen is, I think that obviously Odin is going to come in and get some kind of, like, he's going to initiate a revenge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to set up a very similar situation where they're constantly on the run and being an attack. And Kratos is only going to be able to see, the only outcome is going to be to kill them all, just like he's done before. I think at some point Freya's going to turn back, like have another face turn and come back to their side.
Yeah.
I think that we haven't
Well,
seen the last of asshole Atreus. I think he's
yeah.
gonna flip flop, and I think that's
Well,
just
so
part of it.
the other thing too, and this is going to go into a gameplay and a story mode, is that because he's Loki, Loki is the god of mischief. So like, how are they going to include that into this whole thing? Because he like nothing that he did in this game insinuated any of that. So like, are they going to play to that like side of like the myth of Loki? Or are they going to like give him some like cool like fake out powers where like he can do like multiples of himself or something like that? Like, how are they going to do that?
I don't know exactly. I think it's gonna be like MCU Loki, where he's pretty much like the mischief is more like he's on his own side and not anybody else's. I think that he is going to see himself as like what I ultimately think is going to happen is I think that he's going to kill Kratos. Like it's going to be a reversal of God of War 3. Like and I I don't know if any of the other pantheons are going to come into play. There was that one placard that had like the Ra symbol along with the
Yeah,
Omega and everything.
yeah.
So I don't know if like after all of this, like after they kill all the Nordic gods, if that's going like once
Well,
that
it
happens,
can't
then
be though,
Loki's going to be like,
because the Egyptians were around the same time as the Greeks, and like they like died out around the same time. Like Norse mythology takes place like way after Greek and like Egyptian mythology. So I don't know how that's gonna work out, but
I wonder if it's
yeah,
gonna
I
be
don't know
kind
either.
of some sort of like Rick Riordan intersect, where you know how a lot of his
yeah,
books after the Lightning Thief kind of intersect as far as like
yeah,
Greek and Roman. He's connected Norse mythology to Greek
Well, Greek and Roman
mythology.
are the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just different variants. But he's connected Norse mythology to Greek mythology, and he's done it in an Egyptian series, but I don't remember if he connected it to either of those. But I'm wondering if it's going to be
Yeah,
kind
he actually wrote a little like mini book with a bunch of short stories connecting the main characters from his Egyptian series to the Percy Jackson series. Actually, I haven't
of.
read it. But
Okay.
Weird.
yeah,
But I again, so I don't know if if Atreus slash Loki is going to become like just a god killer. But I think that what's going to happen is because the only thing that Kratos could do again is murder the Pantheon to protect that he's going to have to turn on his own dad because it's going to be like the systemic problem of just there's always God, so we have to kill them. And I think it's going to end up being like I think it's going to be Loki is going to go and just basically become not Kratos himself because it's for revenge, but more of a god exterminator because it's to take away the powers.
so
Maybe I don't know if it's for himself because that could be a thing, but
did the World Serpent die at the end of the first game? It was very unclear on that.
I think he just got really wounded.
Okay, because like I think that Kratos is gonna somehow either on purpose for something we don't know or accidentally. I think he's gonna set off Ragnarok. I think that's gonna be it. I think he's gonna do something along those lines, and then he's gonna kill Thor, and then the third game is gonna be about him going and killing Odin. I think.
I think Odin is going to accidentally set off Ragnarok because the whole thing about that is with Loki. Loki is like the trigger of it, and so with Odin having to do this revenge plan of like coming back because Odin's not going to be happy that Balder and Thor's not going to be happy that his two sons are dead. So it's like, that's three people dead that their dads aren't going to be very happy about. So they're going to come back and if I would hope that they wouldn't try to make that into 3 games. Like we don't need another trilogy of that. Like I think that would be.
I mean, I think it is though. Like it's like this game. Like this is such a huge moneymaker for them now. Like they're gonna stretch this out however they can. Now, whether this happens in the second game and then we see something that we don't know that's gonna trigger a third one, or if they're gonna string this out, I think that we're all 3 of us are more or less right. I think we are all kind of like pretty much kind of like in the right area. I just don't know if they're going to do this all in the next game or if they're going to pull this out between 2 games.
Real quick, Here's another one. I'm wondering if Thor is going to become a Boromir kind of like character in the second game, because so I'm kind of thinking that Thor might become like in the initial scenes of the second game, him and Kratos are gonna fight, and then he's gonna realize who Atreus is and what Atreus will become and what he represents for as far as like the Nordic god's demise possibly. So he's gonna try to woo Atreus over to his side, and then it's gonna become, are you gonna kill Thor? Or are you gonna kill Kratos? And then I think he's gonna end up killing Kratos. Like Atreus is gonna kill Kratos, but then he's gonna realize what he's done, and he's gonna kind of go by the mantra of we have to be better, and kind of go along the lines of what you and Jordan were saying, as far as he's gonna be kind of become this god killer for the sake of being a god killer for the sake of humanity.
I feel like that's just too much for Thor. Like the way that they made Thor out to be, he sounds like just an asshole. Like it's not like a suave kind of trying to like seduce somebody to his side. It's gonna be like, you killed my sons. I'm mad at you. I'm gonna fight you. Like, I mean, he's the one that picked the fight with the World Serpent just because he could, and like went and murdered giants just because he could. Like they say that over and over and over again as you find like the giants' history tablets. It's just like, man, seems like Thor killed a lot of people, and it's like, yeah, you know, all you gotta do is piss him off a little bit, and he'll murder you. So
True.
Yeah.
I don't.
And I think Freya's gonna come back, because I think Freya's gonna try to kill Atreus. I think she's gonna try to get back at Kratos and do what he did to her. So I think that's gonna come at some point. Though I do think he's probably gonna turn back around.
Yeah. I guess we'll see in the coming years when they finally release the next game, if there will be a next game. But I can assume that there will be.
I think there will be. It's going to be on PS5.
Yeah.
Yeah, they built it up too much for it not to be.
And I mean, the next console generation is like within 1 to 2 years away, right?
That comes out this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
PS5 will be out holiday season 2020.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's gonna be very much like the changeover from 3 to 4, where there's gonna be real no point in getting any games for
the first
PS5. Yeah, because it's gonna be like the best of the best that we're gonna get on PS4 are gonna be this year. Like it's gonna be the highest quality, and anything that goes on PS5 is gonna be at the lowest quality because it's still gonna be hardware. Like they just told publishers or developers like last year, like end of last year, like start making your games work for this hardware, and like gave them hardware specs for PS5. So
yeah,
it's gonna be just like Assassin's Creed 4, where it was on both things and looks equally. Like the graphics don't change all that much. It's more the physics that change a little bit more. The water physics.
So I don't think they're gonna have a whole lot of good launch titles. So
probably not, and especially now with how coronavirus has messed with development of like hardware and stuff.
I wonder if that's gonna mess like up the launch of the PS5 at all. Because I'm like, I don't think anyone's gonna be in the market to buy a $400 console come this November.
I would honestly kind of say that it will impact it. I mean, I don't want to go too deep into it, but Sony has been reacting to some of the recent events on Twitter and stuff like that. So I'm curious if once all of this finally dies down, like multiple aspects of the coronavirus and the recent developments in the news and stuff like that. I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to go into it.
Yeah, I can't see I just can't see it going well for them because I can't see them making a whole lot of money. Because if you think about it, consoles have always been a money loss business anyways. But I'm like now, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens, man.
I think it's going to depend on what launch games are, because
even
I
then,
mean,
man, like
I don't know, because what's going to be interesting is this time next year, when we're looking at numbers like the last couple of months. I mean, this is just like games and software, but this is the biggest video game boom in years because of everybody having so much extra time. And
I get that, but there's a difference between like, and also because like a lot of games like right now, like there aren't any really new releases, and like paying $60 games or paying $60 for a game and paying what is it? It's either like 400 or like 499 for a new console, and not to mention a new game on top of that with it. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I hope it doesn't flop, but like I know for a fact that I'm not going to get a new console this year. Like, I know there's no point for me doing that.
well, I mean, I've never gotten a new console on the first release. Like, even the one that I have now was a year later. Like, because there's no point until they iron stuff out anyway.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say is what's going to be interesting is seeing the difference between the two new consoles, because honestly, like, I mean, I've really been enjoying my PS4, but the stuff that's coming out on Xbox One, like not the game specifically, like PS4 has the best exclusives.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's very needed for that. But like, I have an Xbox One, but like, holy shit, dude! Like, if PlayStation wants to win this next generation's game war, they're gonna have to step up to what Microsoft is doing with Game Pass. Like,
Yeah,
Game
I
Pass is
definitely agree.
insane. PS Now has no footing against Game Pass. Game Pass is literally $10 a month for hundreds of games, lots of them brand fucking new, and it's not streamed, it's downloaded. And like, of course, some of them will leave the list over time, but by the time they do leave, you'll be done with it and moved on to the next brand new game that's coming.
I mean,
like,
that's how I think Microsoft is safe face, because like overall, like the PS4 won this generation of console wars.
By far.
Like it's just a fact. So like, feel like Microsoft really did have to come up with something to keep people interested and keep people invested.
yeah,
So,
well, and I think that's where the flip flop is going to happen, because it's very similar now to the predecessor, where so PlayStation 2 was obviously better than original Xbox, but then when it was time for the new generation of consoles, Xbox 360 won out over PS3 because, one, it came out a year earlier, and two, it was $200 cheaper, because when PS3 first came out, it was $600.
Yeah.
And it didn't have half of the even just the minutia that Xbox 360 had. And it took a long time for them to build up. And again, the exclusives are better. You know, Xbox had Halo and shit and Gears of War, but Christ, like all the games that are on PS3, like Last of Us and Metal Gear Solid 4 and a bunch of other games, like little reasons to buy a console. Where an Xbox, there's no reason to buy a console except for, well, and then also now, customer service, because customer service for PlayStation is laughably shit.
It's garbage.
Like, they will literally lock you out of your system for no reason and will not help you get it back.
Yeah, that happened to my sister's boyfriend just like this other week. He went to like Arkansas or something for the weekend, and he took his PS4 with him to watch Netflix. And when he got back to Tulsa, they locked him out and they wouldn't tell him why.
oh my gosh!
I just saw a news article today where Australia sued Sony because of their refund policy. Australia has a particular refund policy where everything you buy in Australia can be returned within so many days, and Sony wasn't honoring that system, that refund policy, and so the courts decide won in the favor of Australia, and so they are paying Australia $2.8 million.
Jesus.
Imagine being sued by a country.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, that's their fault for not paying the fucking attention to their consumer laws. Like, when you have an international company and you are selling products in several different countries, all different countries, you have to know the individual consumer laws for each of those places. And so, like, you might have a company policy that doesn't work in another country, so you have to adopt those countries' policies.
Kind of speaking on the console aspect of things real quick. I don't want to get it too deep into this, but I'm kind of curious in the future if it's going to be kind of a compatibility war. Because, I mean, at the moment, you can use an Xbox One with a Sony TV, right? And it's a Microsoft product with a Sony display product. But I'm curious if in the future that Microsoft is going to come out with something similar to how Apple does their desktop series. So where, like, the main computer bit of it is in the monitor. So I'm wondering if in the future maybe Microsoft is going to release some sort of like TV thing that is going to be both combined, like maybe Xbox and computer thing or not. But
I don't think so, because that would be too expensive for them.
Yeah, not to mention, and I said it earlier, like the console game has never been a profitable business as far as like tons of money, like especially because like you said in the last generation, like the Xbox and Sony have been having to, like, in order to compete with each other, they try to match prices as much as they can now. And so because of that, like they lose money on every console they make. And so I think the overall push in the long haul has been to like not worry so much about consoles and much about like the games you make and what company has right to what game. And I think honestly this PS5 and the Xbox, whatever the new one's called, like I think these
Series
are
X.
The Xbox Series X. I think that these are going to be like probably like the last real consoles we really see for a while. Just because like I can see things pushing over, because like you know how like it's kind of similar with like movie and TV streaming services right now. Like right now it's like who has what that I'm willing to pay for. Like you know, like Netflix has access to these shows, and like so I'm gonna pay money to see that. Like I got a Disney Plus subscription because they have access to Star Wars and Marvel stuff. It's the only reason I have them. Like I don't really watch anything else. It's there so I can watch it and I can have it. I think we're gonna see a similar system of like who's gonna have access to what games, and I think that there's going to be. This is like me spitballing here, but just kind of what from stuff I've read and things that I've heard. I think that there's going to be a system that comes out where you can kind of play whatever on it, but then like you download like subscription services for games, kind of like Game Pass or whatever. So like you'll have access to all these games and you can download them if you want. And I think that's where it's going to be. I don't know how far into the future that is, but like that's not out of the realm of possibility. And I can see just like because each console has like a cycle life of what, like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Like
unless it's a PS2 and it's like 20 years.
Yeah, no wrong.
Right. But like I just think that by the time we get to the end of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X's life cycle, like there's not going to be a need for them anymore.
No, I think that's definitely the truth, and especially if we didn't have proof before, we have proof now, because the whole issue with physical media and games has always been like you never know when you're going to lose something. You know, like we've talked about before with like the rights of stuff, like games leaving the store, like Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Like you can't download that game and buy that game now because they lost the right, like the rights are gone, so it's not something that can be traded. But I think it's totally going to be the streaming. Like we're moving further and further away from the physical because it's either going to be stream stuff, like you know, even now, like we talked about this before, where it used to be when you bought a game, the game was on the disc. That's where like the disc was the memory of all the game, and you put it in the console, and then the console only kept like it would download updates to read the disc differently. You know, that's what the patches and stuff would be. But now games, when you get the disc, the disc is actually just the access key, and the game is downloaded to the console, and then the disc is the key that lets you play the game. And so it's moving more and more digital constantly that way. So even buying physical shit doesn't mean anything anymore. And with the success of Game Pass and even PS Now to a certain extent, and then Apple has started their own game thing. I don't remember what it's called, but it's got a bunch of indie games and shit on.
Yeah.
Like Apple Arcade. Yeah, Apple Arcade. Like that's the direction it's definitely going to go. the devices themselves are basically just going to become more and more computer towers with bigger and bigger hard drives. And I think that's like it's eventually we're just not even going to have disk trays. Honestly, if they were smart, they would just start putting disks on flash drives. Like that'd be the smartest thing. Let's just go back to carts. Carts are way smarter.
That's what I was actually just about to talk to you guys about, because in the audio industry, like with production licenses and stuff, so there's this thing that you have to use with Pro Tools. In order to be able to use Pro Tools, you have to use the iLok system, which is a licensing managing program that allows you and is basically the key to be able to use Pro Tools from any location, but without that iLok USB, you cannot access and use Pro Tools. It essentially contains the key, like you were talking about, Jordan, as far as like you putting the disk into your system and having the key to unlock the stuff and download it. So I'm kind of wondering if, like you were saying, they're just going to kind of bring back the memory card system almost, and you have this licensing managing program or whatever that allows you to access, oh, you have this and this and this, but you don't have these things. That's okay. So you go to any various system and you can do that.
I mean, technically we already have that in place just without the carts, right? Like think about PlayStation Plus. Like with PlayStation Plus, if you have your account active, it knows that, and so you're able to download and play the games that you have. But as soon as my subscription to PlayStation Plus expires, even if the game is downloaded, it has a little locked icon on it, and I can't use it until I get that Plus back. So there's still already that system in place. We don't even technically need the carts. It's just one of those things with everyone wanting to be physical, but there's no need for physical anymore. Honestly, they just need to be making the hard drives bigger. Like it's a pain in the ass that my PlayStation 4 has 500 gigabytes, and it feels like it's always fucking full because all these games are fucking huge now.
Yep.
So it's like, I don't know. I don't know the pricing of shit, but I guarantee you that the new systems, I haven't looked into it, but I'm pretty sure the base kits start at 1 terabyte, which makes sense because these base kits started at 500 gigabytes, where base kit Xbox 360 was 20 gigs. So like you can see the huge jump each time that it eventually got bigger and bigger and bigger. I remember like I went through 3 hard drives through the 360 because I started with a 20, which was the base kit hard drive, bumped it up to like a 60, and ended with like 120, and I thought I had like all the memory in the world. And then when this came out, it's like 500 gigs, and I was like, Jesus Christ. And then now it's like, dude, I need 4 of these to be able to to have the games downloaded that I want to have downloaded, because you know, goddamn Call of Duty takes up 120 gigabytes for whatever reason.
Well, then it gives you like 50 gigs for every update too.
Yeah. So I think, and that's where the whole streaming thing makes more sense too, where it's like, even if you don't want to have that shit downloaded, you're going to have a slightly worse quality depending on the server farm and how far you are from it and whatnot. But it's not taking up any space. Like, it's all in the cloud. So really, you're just purchasing access, just like you do with Netflix and Hulu and all those places. You're just purchasing the portal that you get to view the content from. And I think that's where it's going to... And hopefully, too, I think another thing with the deviation of these console companies, Nintendo's always going to be behind on that because they don't give a shit about that. They care about first-party consumer people, like, you know, it's like a community kind of thing. They don't care about online. That's why they don't support any of the online stuff. They don't give a fuck. But, like, a lot of these third-party companies, they're saying that if you buy their game when it comes out, like, I believe Assassin's Creed Valhalla, when it comes out for PS4, if you buy that, or I guess Xbox One, because I don't know if they've said this for PS4 yet, because PS4 still doesn't know if it's backwards compatible or not yet. But Xbox One, if you buy it for Xbox One, that Ubisoft is already saying for Xbox One Series X, or whatever, Xbox Series X, you'll have that version of it too, like without charge.
Didn't Cyberpunk, like CD Projekt Red, they said the same thing, right?
Yes. So I think that this is going to put a lot more power into the devs and the publishers with that kind of mentality too. And I think we're going to start seeing more blurred lines of, because I think most people would like to at some point just finally fucking merge this shit into one thing.
Yep,
And
because that's the other thing you can get to this too is crossplay and stuff like that. Like over the last few years, that's been such a huge debate, and like Sony has always been on the tail end of that because they've never wanted to do it, and Microsoft was a big proponent of it, probably because they were losing the console war and they wanted to get people on their side. They're like, oh no, we'll start supporting crossplay, like when they were doing like.
Well, it's kind of 50-50 because, like, I mean, they're losing the console war, but at the same time, like, that's basically giving them a larger chunk of it because most people are using Windows whenever they're using a PC.
Yep.
So, like, that's combining two of their communities into one, so it's not that big of a deal. The reason Sony didn't want to do it is because they didn't want to give other companies access to their netcodes.
I know. It's just like that. Like I just think that's a whole other thing of it too. It's just like I want to be able to play like any game with my friend and not have to worry about like, oh, do they have an Xbox One or PS4? Like I can't play any game with like my cousins up in Minnesota because like he owns an Xbox One, so there's almost nothing we can play together besides like I think Modern Warfare now, but that's about it. And
Fortnite.
Yeah, okay, yeah, there's that too.
You can play Mortal Kombat 11. They have open crossplay. It's in beta right now, but you can still play against people.
Pretty sure Rocket League is too.
I've been wanting to get into Rocket League lately, but yeah, I'm sure it gets smashed by PC players.
Bro, you wanna get Rocket League? I'll make a squad, bro.
Yeah, you want to join up Spectral Squad team?
Oh my god, dude! I'll fire my. I don't use my Switch a lot anymore, but I have Rocket League on my Switch, and I'll just play on my Switch, man.
Can you do that? Does that have? This doesn't appeal to either of you two, but like it's supposed to be towards the end of this year. Dead by Daylight's going to be opening up their game to cross-platform, which is going to be awesome because the largest community on that is on PC, and so I think the cross-platform, like they also, I don't know if it's going to be opening up. They just launched mobile, but it's on every platform. So if they do that, then maybe there won't be so many issues finding games. That'll be fun.
That'll be cool.
It'll be a lot harder because on PC, characters work a lot differently. So, there's some characters on console that don't work as well as they do on PC. So it's going to be really interesting going against actually good characters that you're not used to being good, but I don't know. It's also one of those things where it's like I don't care at this point. Like I used to care a whole lot when I was younger because it was like I couldn't wait, but it's like now, I'm so picky about when I buy things. Like
yeah, me too, man. Like that's what it's gonna be forever before I buy a new console, and I still I have no way of knowing which one I'm gonna go. I'm really loving my PS4 right now. Like it's the perfect console for me. It does everything I need it to do. Like it has a ton of good games. I'm happy and I'm content. And they're still going to be supporting the PS4 for a while, so it's like I don't have any real reason to leave.
Yeah, me neither.
Not to mention because I have the Pro, so it's like the best on the market right now.
I mean, if I do get a new console, then I will be getting a new PS4 because like mine's so old and it's just constantly sounding scary, and I can't ever tell if it's scarier or not. Like if the scaring factor is growing. Yeah. I watched a video the other day of like a dude that's a tech dude that like does PC cleanings and stuff, and it was like a 20-minute video where it was just like a time-lapse thing of him cleaning like 5 different things, and some of them were Xboxes and PS4s, and the other ones were like PC towers, and like there's like one PS4 that had like a bunch of dead bugs inside of it, and it just looked disgusting, and that was like they were like, man, it gets really hot and stuff, and it's because there's like a bunch of dead stuff like in the fan, so it wasn't like turning well, and there's like there's like a PC that like the tower, like they smoke inside, and so the tower was just full of ash. And it was just like, hey, this is why you shouldn't smoke around your computer. And I was like, well, I mean, good, I'm glad I don't. But it's just like, just even like seeing what that is with people that smoke constantly in their house, and just thinking about like how much dust and hair comes off of you. And like, like I've never opened mine up, so it's like how much dust and hair is inside my PS4.
I don't even want to think about that, man.
I will say that like cracking open your PS4 and taking a can of compressed air to the fan will improve it like impressively, honestly, because my dad and I did that to our PS4, the one that I'm currently using this past summer, and there was so much dust in the fan that we took a vacuum to it, we took a can of compressed air to it, and within like the next 2 days, we saw the processing time and like the amount of noise just go down exponentially. So it's definitely something to look into.
I probably should. 'Cause I've never done it, and
It's not super hard. There's tons of videos online that show you step by step how to do it.
yeah, I think they really, when they put together the PS4, they definitely wanted you to have easy access to it, because especially like where the hard drive is, like that whole part is supposed to be taken off because they wanted it to be easy to replace the hard drive. And the hard drive itself is just it's just like, if you went and bought like an external hard drive, it's just that whatever's inside of an external hard drive is the same thing. Like, I think the biggest hard drive you can put in the PS4 is a 2 terabyte hard drive. So you could just go get one of the external ones and pop that bitch out and put it in the PS4. And then you have to you do have to get a flash drive, the boot up code for like the PS Home and everything on there. So then like you can put that in there. Like I watched a whole video on it. But then you can also do an external hard drive, like connect, and the highest external hard drive you can connect is 8 gigabytes, or 8 terabytes. So you could technically have 10 terabytes of hard drive connected to your PS4. And then you could finally play Call of Duty.
Oh my gosh.
If you have good internet. If you have
if you don't live in Tulsa.
Like
you have good internet, and that's the only thing you want on your console.
Like, the people that might be listening to this probably don't realize how many times that I try to play Warzone and would just get constantly disconnected for no fucking reason.
I don't think we ever played a single game with you, Tyler.
We
like
played
at
like
all.
2.
Man.
We played like 2 or 3 total. Like,
yeah.
Full rounds. God.
It's funny. I haven't touched Modern Warfare in like weeks. The last time I touched it was the last time I played with you, Jordan, and that was a while ago.
Well, I've been waiting to hear news on because what is it? Infinity Ward said that they were going to make a change to the way that the game downloads, to where you could actually pick and choose what parts of the game, because the way that Call of Duty was working was it would download everything because they wanted everything to be connected. So if you download Warzone, the free-to-play Battle Royale, you are also downloading the Modern Warfare campaign, the Modern Warfare multiplayer, the Modern Warfare 2 remaster campaign. You were downloading everything, and that's why it was so fucking huge. And so because of everybody complaining about it, because that's ridiculous.
It's just stupid design.
You're supposed to be able to go in now and pick and choose which ones are downloaded and which ones aren't. Which, of course, I would only have Warzone downloaded because I don't own any of the other shit. So I've been waiting for confirmation that has happened, and then I'll re-download Warzone, because that should only be like maybe 30 gigs.
I would say 30 gigs at the most, because like at the current state, Warzone is almost 100 gigs, right?
Yeah, I think the last time I looked, it was like 120.
That's like as big, if not bigger, than Red Dead 2.
Yep.
Which is 2 discs. 2 discs.
Yep.
That's weird that it has 2 discs. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's an install disc and a play disc.
Yeah.
Like GTA 5 had the same thing.
No, it didn't.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. No, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't.
Yeah, for the 360.
GTA 5 right here.
Oh,
Maybe
no,
it's
okay.
360.
Fuck off. Don't talk about the 360. That's completely different. That hardware isn't the same shit.
I know.
That's just like fucking Dead Space 2 was 2 discs, and it's like, what year am I in? What?
Is this
it's not like this is Resident Evil 2.
Playing Final Fantasy 4 again?
Yeah, it's like this game isn't even long enough for this, and it's literally just because like they had Well, I don't think there was any pop in and pop out on graphics, which is nice. But it's cutscenes. Cutscenes are the biggest thing, man. That's what takes so much fucking space on all that shit is fucking cutscenes. Because everything has to be super rendered.
Mega render.
Super rendered.
Well, I guess that kind of wraps up our God of War conversation.
Oh yeah, that's what this is about.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any closing comments?
Go play God of War.
Yes.
If you want.
We can't make you do anything. But if you're listening to this and you value our opinion, which if you are listening to this, then you probably do, then go play God of War.
Or you made a big mistake, and how you got this far, I don't know.
I was going to say, if you've gotten this far and you don't care about what we say, then I don't know what you're doing with your life.
If you gotten this
kinda-
far, thank you.
That's rough, buddy.
But anyways, we've been Spectacle Squad. I am Tyler.
I'm Ben.
I'm Jordan.
Y'all stay safe. See y'all.